find a way.
Samantha Gray, I'm so glad you're here because you are doing some interesting stuff in Bristol and I want to hear all about it. And it's like, what do we choose? You're doing so many different things. So let's do it all. So Theatre Bristol, it's got some big stuff going on.
Yes.
Everybody in Bristol was like, what is going to happen to the Cameo? Who is going to turn this iconic theater into something usable? And here comes Theatre Bristol to the rescue. Tell me about what's going on there.
Well, it's funny that you use the word rescue. I think that, we all, we're part of the community and we watch the Cameo sit there. We watch the marquee not change. And, for about a year before that, we had, we perform in our art space. We have a 100-seat black box theater. And we perform at the Paramount, which is a 740-seat theater. And those are really important to us. They serve, distinct needs. But what was happening is in our black box, we were selling out shows. If we put a classroom of 8th graders in, it fills it instantly. It's one classroom.
Yeah.
So, we do Diary of Anne Frank. We can't accommodate all the different schools. And we had so many contacting us. And so we were looking at, could we increase the number of seats in our art space? And we brought in an architect to look at that. We brought in the city code person. And the upshot was we couldn't get past about 150 seats. And really, when you look at other theaters in the region, they've got at least 250 seats. So we knew we weren't going to really be able to solve that issue. And that's coupled with the fact that we need staff. And we used to a long time ago, we owned the Paramount. And then after that, after fixing it up, we did many shows, as many as maybe 9 shows a year there. And with multiple performances, 14 performances of Oliver, I remember. But with, the things changing at the Paramount, we couldn't do that many shows there. So we kind of lost that income source. It just changed. And we couldn't put as many seats in the 100-seat theater. So when we were doing 9 shows a year at the Paramount and more, we had as many as 8 full-time staff at one point. And there just isn't enough income to support that. So not only were we trying to not turn away people, but we're also trying to have sustainable staffing.
Sure.
And so the solution is more seats.
Yeah.
And as I say all the time, not that ticket sales cover the cost of a production. They never do. You have to have donations too. But increasing the seating would definitely give us more capacity, more flexibility, more people enjoying it and not being turned away.
Yeah.
So we looked at several different things around town, just going, what's possible? VI has 2 theaters in its area. And we thought, well, is there something there? And it became clear we were not going to get access to any of that. Of course, we looked at other locations, but we really just wanted a place where we could do what we need to the space. And usually the refrain has been over the years when we were looking for other space, just for a particular production or a place to rehearse, people would say, what about the Cameo? And the refrain was always, there's no wing space, no fly space, no backstage. End of story. And it had been on the market for a little bit. And finally, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go look at it. And I called Brent, the owner, and I said, Brent, can I come look at it? And he goes, I've been waiting for you to call me. And I thought, dude, you could have just called me.
Did it all make sense when you walked in?
So when we walked in, I really expected to just see, oh, this isn't going to work. And, those things are still kind of true. Once upon a time, there was this antique pin rail there. And that my son, who's a theater major, just oohed and awed over. He's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And there's not really wing space. All those things were true. But as we looked at it, we realized there's a place in the realm of, theater that will work here.
Yeah.
And we just completed 2 productions there.
Wow.
So it's proven. So
yeah,
we spent, after we met, I said, don't let anybody else get this. We want it. He said, I'm going to do my best, but, I don't know who's going to come along and buy it. I said, I don't have the money for this, a couple $1 million. No. So we spent a good long time looking at how we could raise money. Our goal is to be debt free in the space. That's not how we got in, but at least we were able to secure it.
Yeah.
So we did this really cool thing. We did the Believe in Bristol e-grant, which is kind of like a Shark Tank event.
Okay.
Where you pitch, your business. And so I said, can I do it? We're a nonprofit, but can I do it? And Maggie Elliott at Believe in Bristol said, yeah, you can do it. And so I made the pitch and we made the cut and we got in, and we do over the course of the weeks you're doing this. They bring in different people. Like they bring in real estate agent, like what's available. They bring in a financial managers to like look at how you can do your budget and how you're going to finance this. And they brought in some loan companies, and I went up to one of them after and I said, do you ever fund nonprofits? And, or, let us borrow. And he said, no, yes, but here's who you need to talk to. So that was the beginning of something really amazing, because we met Sam West with People Incorporated Financial Services. And he said, there's a program. There's a program just for you. And he said, we have $1 million, but I have a request already for 350 of it. I said, well, I want all the rest of it. But it's the Virginia 9th Development District. And we got funding there. We got funding from the Virginia Small Business Financing Authority. And we had some money that we have been working on raising. And then we got in.
I found talking to different leaders of nonprofits that amazing things are possible if there's a leader and a really big vision. But you got to have both of those things. Like you can't have like small ideas, and you can't have managers leading. And so tell me, clearly this is an example of doing a big thing. When you think about your vision for it, like it's not to be a profitable business, right? It is, there's something deeper there. Tell me what drives you about theater. Because it's specifically theater for kids, right? Like you're doing a lot of work. You're doing a lot of work with kids, also adults, but kids are a big part of this.
Yeah, it's very much both. I think for me, it's catching I wrote a book about Kathy DeCaterina, who started the theater. And it was about kind of like the first 35 years. And included in it is how did she start a theater? And I think, honestly, I have to say, to give credit, I caught her vision. It was and a lot of people did. It was very much about helping children gain confidence. And, the more you spend time with theater, you realize how it impacts all kinds of life. We see young people so successful in many fields because they did theater, and adults too. We watch adults grow right in front of us. And I attended a session the other day on leader burnout in the theater. And, that's going to happen, right? You get burnout, you get tired. But when you watch people transform on stage and in life, that's what is the catalyst for me.
Tell me what that looks like. Because I think people from the outside, they come and see the productions, but they don't see the effect that it has on people, right? That are involved in it.
Oh, I've just seen it over and over. I mean, you've got your proverbial shy child who, finds themselves on stage and, progressively takes a little bit more of a role, maybe no lines to one line to a major role that holds the show, and watch them grow and become more confident. And it's extraordinary. I mean, there's a young lady now who is doing an opera who performed with us as Tiny Tim and then later was Annie in our production of Annie on the Paramount stage, and kind of quiet, but not anymore. I mean, she is dominating and she's doing what she dreamed to do. And I love that we gave her a platform, and that repeats itself over and over. We have an adult who said to me, he not only was in shows, but he would come and just religiously clean our paint shop for us. He'd say that he owned that. And he said to me, this is the best thing I have ever done for my mental health. And you could see it, it was a family and a community. And it happens whether it's somebody who builds sets or makes costumes or is on stage. It doesn't matter.
What do you think what have you learned about kids and adults from theater? Like, what is it that makes us like spread our wings on a stage?
I definitely think it's having people believe in you. But I actually had someone say to me this morning that they get stage fright and they can't do theater. And I said, it doesn't work like that. The way people spread their wings is we prepare them. We spend weeks, sometimes, 4 to 6 days a week rehearsing. And it's progressive, like it's step by step. We help people develop their character. We help people, get the choreography, whatever it is. We have people who come to us and they've never been in a show. They're going to learn what's upstage and downstage and stage right and stage left. And you see them gain that, but it's very incremental, and you get to master each part and move forward and become more confident and take on bigger and bigger roles if that's their desire. But the system works, and that's what I really trust. You see
this in youth sports. Like I see this with young kids, and that incremental increase of competence, right? Like it's not like just artificial confidence. Like you can't just go to Walmart and buy confidence and give it to a kid. But when they get better at something, they start to have confidence in it, and then they start having confidence in themselves. Mm-hmm. It sounds like that's what you're describing in theater.
Yeah. And I teach parenting classes, and
we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot about, and I really see it in the theater, is, good parents, and a lot of the bonding part. And I really look at early secure attachment, but one of the things that's key is we talk about developing skills and opportunities and recognition. And those three things working together are what really help people build confidence and grow.
Say those one more time. Skills,
opportunities, and recognition. And they work together, and it comes from kind of social development strategy, which was developed by some really cool folks. Actually, Hawkins and Catalano, I can tell you who it is. And those working together are really brilliant, because if you have a child and they don't have skills, but they're given an opportunity, can you imagine? They feel frustrated. They feel defeated. They can't progress. If you have a child who has a lot of skills, but they don't have any opportunities, they can find themselves getting into trouble, doing things that, without kind of a good platform or a healthy way to do it, that could be troublesome. And then the recognition, I think that's just kind of who we are as humans. That's a place where we feel valued, we feel purpose, we grow in finding our place. Not that it has to stay that same place, you can evolve. But it's a healthy way. And I think theater is beautifully equipped to help people do that. And again, it doesn't have to be on stage. It can be in other forms, painting scenic art.
Right. The recognition piece is interesting to me. As a coach, I've always connected the dots between skills and opportunity. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and the skills are important. Like, you have to be competent at something to seize an opportunity, and to have the self-belief. I haven't thought so much about the recognition, but maybe that's the appeal of sports, is that you're playing in front of people. But if you're not an athlete, what other opportunities are there for kids to get the recognition? Like, there aren't many, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it can even be as simple as the parent noticing,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, and I'm not a big one that walks around and go, like, oh, I need people to notice me. I actually kind of like when people don't notice me.
Yeah.
But I think that there is an element like, just appreciation. It might be another way of looking at recognition, or just acknowledgement. You exist. I am here, and you notice what I did.
Yeah.
And that's nice. And it's not the same thing as affection or love that parent might show, but it's just that, I've done something and somebody noticed. Mm-hmm. And theater's so good at that, and sports definitely too.
Yeah. Theater is magical because there's actually the stage.
There's some applause that comes with it. Yeah. And there's that really, I love when we'll be in weeks of rehearsal and that opening night. And when the actors feel the applause, that's where you really feel the energy that there isn't theater without an audience. It's really wonderful.
Tell me about the shy kid who gets up somehow they get up the courage to sign up and get involved in this.
Yeah.
Tell me about, like, what do you have to build? What's the development look like between day one and the first night?
We get kind of two kinds of situations where parents want to sign up their kids. Either one, they're just so dramatic that they're, always a ham and the parents going, and they need to be in this. And then there's the other, which my child is really shy. I'm hoping this might help them. And, we have a summer camp, which I am a big believer in because it's a lot of fun, right? We do a lot of theater games. So that's how we start with a shy child, is playing games. And theater games are really excellent and should never be underestimated for what they can do. But summer camps and classes really help that child. And we see today kids who are getting the lead roles, they're kids who grew up in the camps. And it's not because of any favoritism. We don't operate that way. Casting is based on merit. But you definitely see those kids who've had that just really, it's kind of like sports again. It's that repeated exposure. The more time you clock in hours, it's that 10,000 hours of conquering something or mastering it. The more hours they put in, the more often they show up to camp, more often they show up to classes. Every time they audition, every time they do an audition workshop, every time they take a dance class or a vocal lesson, they're adding to their skill set. And that's where they grow.
The hours are part of it. I've also seen people invest a lot of hours into things and they never get better at them. So the environment's important too, right?
It is. And I will say this too. I really believe in, if we have a child that is just miserable in an audition or they're miserable on stage, and this is not what they want to do, I think it's almost a sin to cast them in a show when they could be spending their time developing their skills where they're supposed to be. Now, I'm not saying everyone can't benefit from camp or classes, or I think everybody benefits. But in terms of being in a show, and if they think this is someplace they want to go, but those skills are not, or they're just not happy, it's not right for us to take that from them. And sometimes they call it like a mercy casting, and I don't think that's fair to the director who's volunteering their time, or the crew, or that child.
Yeah. The end product of all that, kids they're not good at talking these days. Like technology has taken some of those skills away, just communicating. And so it seems like theater even has a more important role now than it probably did 20 years ago.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I will say this. In our space, people are rehearsing, and I'm not saying you won't see a phone around, but when they're in rehearsal, you will not see a phone around.
Yeah.
When they are in our summer camp, nobody's touching their phones. They are engaged. They love it. This is what they're hungry for, to use their bodies, to move, to express themselves.
Yeah.
And that is not a priority. And this is even the kids who come in and they think they want to be on their phones. You just give them a little tiny bit of time and they're not even thinking about it.
For that to happen, you've created an environment that's very engaging. There's probably no downtime.
Right.
That doesn't happen just by accident. Like, how do you create, like, in terms of like the experience and the environment? Like, what do you feel is important to creating that kind of experience?
Well, I think we have really excellent people, and I think that they plan, they know what they're going to do. Yeah. We do have a sense of downtime. There's a kind of downtime that lets creativity and thinking and important downtime, I guess I should say. But otherwise, it is very, even if they have times where they're creating a set or they're designing makeup designs or something like that, there's a lot of freedom. It's unstructured play, even though it's got a framework to it. That sounds kind of contradictory, but I think that's still important because creative juices don't really flow under duress, and you need time to kind of freely explore. And so we make sure the kids have that. I mean, when we do classes and we have little kindergartners come in, we just have them run around for a good long time because they're so excited to be in a big open space and just run and move.
Yeah, we do that with soccer too. Like you start with a game of tag, and serves a lot of purposes.
Yes, it does. That's exactly right.
But it has to be planned. Like when you're working with kids, if it's going to be a good environment, like it has to be a pretty tight production because if you just leave things to their own devices, like you lose them pretty quickly. It's hard to get them back.
Well, and we feel like, these parents have signed their kids up for something and we want to give them something quality.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very thoughtful, and we're very fortunate to have such good folks.
Yeah. So when you think about the future, the Cameo, which is it's a beautiful building.
It is beautiful.
And so much history there. So what do you see? Well,
that's really exciting too. We are, of course, going to do shows there. We just finished Land of Jesters and Rumpelstiltskin and Steel Magnolias, which was such a big hit. And we have more shows coming up later. So we'll continue to do productions there. But now we have a mortgage, and we haven't had that before. And part of our design was to bring in some of the things that the theater used to do. And that these things will be coming along over time. But Cameo was one of the places a lot of people saw their first Disney film. And so we're looking at how we can bring some of those films back to the stage. So it's a common thing for community theaters to show films when they're not using the venue for production.
Okay.
And it makes it kind of easier for when we have a set or don't have a set on stage. So that's of interest. Also of interest is to bring other performing arts. So we're about live performance and bringing other arts to the stage. And it could be a variety of things. But we've looked at, doing something like having school shows in the morning with this really amazing puppet theater and have that in the mornings. Then the afternoons have a workshop with our cast, because a lot of theater is now incorporating puppetry. And then the evening have a public performance. So that we're really gaining, a lot out of that time. Puppetry is just one. We're also looking at bringing a lot more children and family entertainment, so that when we're not in the space, we're bringing, some popular kids music that I always say the kind that doesn't make parents crazy, the kind we like. So, it could be a nice night out or afternoon out for family, grandparents with grandchildren. So that's how we see kind of seasoning that. Of course, eventually we'll be including Rhythm and Roots will be a stage for that, just as the art space already is. And, there's a lot of community organizations that we imagine will be on the stage too.
I'm always curious about how leaders build these sorts of things. Like, you had the vision, you're executing on it now. You don't do that alone, right?
Oh no.
Like, tell me how you have been able to get the right people involved and a part of this story.
I have talked about that so much because that is absolutely key. I mentioned Sam West. He has been a cheerleader from the beginning, and there's something about when people believe in it, you believe in it even more, because we all need cheerleaders. Yeah. And that's an important role. Like, you don't have to be somebody who comes up with all the ideas. Sometimes you have to be the cheerleader, and sometimes you need cheerleaders. And our board president, Ann Vance, has been extraordinary, kind of the right person for the right time. I've told her that over and over. You were here when we needed you. She would text me probably every other day. Any word on the Cameo? Any word on, whether it was getting the contract signed or getting the funding. I never felt like there was any doubt we should move forward. Our entire board of directors, they were like, this is the right thing to do. And that's pretty extraordinary to have that big of a decision with that big of responsibility to come along, with it, and everybody be behind it.
It doesn't happen without leadership. What's your style?
My style?
Yeah. How do you get all these people behind this idea?
I think it's just that there's a good idea, and I don't know if that's a style. I think that, but that everybody has a role to play, a lot of intuition, a lot of hard work and late nights writing up reports and proposals and talking to people and finding what's that compelling story. Everything is ultimately storytelling, right? Yeah. Even as we are here. Yeah. So finding out what is that story, that story of where we're turning away schools, and that's not good. And we want to be a preeminent community theater. Why do we not have enough seats? Let's address that. And then people hearing that story and going, I get that. It's easy to understand. I get it. And talking a lot.
Telling the story.
I don't know if those are leadership styles, but those are some of...
Yeah, but it's important in the storytelling. I think one of the things theater would do is help us learn how to be better storytellers. And the longer I live, the more valuable that is.
Yeah,
and
you think it's the domain of a certain person or a certain type of group, and it's not.
Yeah. And it goes back to like confidence and self-belief and all those
and
things.
I wouldn't say I have any of those things. I'm that reluctant leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I probably had my druthers, I'd just be quietly teaching parenting classes like I always done. But it was a need, responding to a need. I think if there's any leadership style I have, it's probably saying, oh, there's a need and I know how to do that. So let me help, I'm glad to help.
Yeah.
And I see servant leadership, if I had to say anything, would be mostly my style. There's a place for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We can find out how everyone can contribute and be a part of it. And, that's really important to me. And I didn't know there was kind of a movement toward this, but, I think I found myself in hindsight, reading some of Brene Brown's work, on vulnerability and leadership. And I went, oh, that's what I do. Being perfect is no type of leader. Being vulnerable, I think, is it's a hard way to lead, but I think being open to ideas and not seeing yourself as the dictator or the controller or the only one with vision, just constantly being open and collecting what everyone's saying and listening, being a listener, which I'm not saying I do perfectly any of that, but that's what I aspire to.
Yeah.
Lots of empathy.
It's interesting because I've had so many conversations like this with, I'm talking earlier, like leaders of nonprofits that are doing these big things. Like you're doing big things. Like this is no small thing. And it's like, they don't see themselves as leaders. And I'm just wondering, like, is there this like vision of a leader, of like this male figure that is the prototype of a leader, and these people like yourself doing extraordinary things that just don't see yourself in that prototype, but it's a different kind of leadership.
It's true. You're right on.
Yeah.
I think we do create a stereotype that's not really fair of what leadership is, and it's all kinds of ways. We're all leaders, in some capacity.
And I relate this to like girls specifically. Like boys know what leadership looks like, and they see themselves like most boys.
Many people,
most boys see themselves as aspiring to be a leader in something, right? Like that's their heroes. Girls, it's a little bit different. Like it's more of a challenge, and so like I think girls need more role models, and like what you're doing is a role model for leadership. But I see this consistently with females doing big things in Bristol.
I like to think we're maybe taking leadership and turning it on its head and offering a different variation that I think men and women alike can benefit from. I hope.
Yeah, probably so. I want to hold that up to like girls. Like this is this is a model of what it can look like. But anyway, I've seen this pattern in so many of these
well, you're interviewing leaders. I'm sure you do see some interesting patterns.
Yeah, there are. Everybody's unique, but you start to see these patterns. So it kind of goes into parenting, which you're a bit of an expert on. And we connected these dots right beforehand. Holly and I went to your parenting class before our first child was born over 24 years ago, and we just made that connection. So you've been teaching parenting classes for a long time.
Yeah.
Still passionate about that. Tell me why.
Oh, why?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. That's a good
That's
question.
That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it, to be really honest with you. We were living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was at home with my daughter. I was doing contract work. I still worked in international development. And so my clients were remote, but I felt kind of isolated. And I thought, I need a little bit of postpartum, baby blues, partly because we had moved from DC and I didn't have a community like I did there. And I thought, I need to meet people. I need to do something. I need to quit thinking about myself. And so I answered this call first. They needed someone to teach parenting classes in Spanish. and they said I could bring my daughter with me. So I started teaching this program called Nurturing Parenting Program, which now I'm an organizational trainer in.
Yeah.
And I still can teach that program. And so I taught that for about 5 years, around the year in Spanish parenting classes, and found that, here's how I stumbled into it. I stumbled into it because of that response. But the more I learned about parenting, my master's is international development. And, when you're looking at crises around the world and just in our hometown, what is the common element? How do we go upstream? And how do we look at those issues? And I guess the more I studied, the more I learned, it became clear to me, as it did many other people who I'm just copying now, that, those first 5 years, prenatal and the first 5 years are so critical. And I was learning a lot more about early secure attachment and how that secure attachment a child forms with their primary caregiver and multiple caregivers is going to really make a difference in their ability to grow and develop in a healthy manner, how they will have empathy as they grow, and compassion and joy, and be affectionate, and just really be a healthy child. And the more I learned about what the components of that were, I thought, gosh, there's so many of these other problems that, as an international development, student of that, if we just went upstream and addressed these, we could solve so many other issues, like addictions, right? Having resilience and having a healthy attachment is one of the best ways to avoid addictions. Gabor Mate speaks so eloquently of this. So if anybody wants to look that up, that is good stuff. And I thought, if I'm going to spend my time and have limited time, then I want to spend my time doing my best to communicate this message to other families and to equip families as best I can, so that we call our group Parenting Suite. And it's because we have a suite of offices, SUITE, but it really got down to, wait, that's really great. Parenting Suite. We want parenting to be sweet. It can be joyful. It doesn't have to be a daily, experience filled with conflict and just frustration, but rather a lot of joy, and to not miss the joyful moments, and to really, how can it be better? And so how can we help parents foster connection and, gain that cooperation? And how can we help children be truly independent? Because it's the opposite of what people think how you gain independence is. And we have a long legacy of some really terrible parenting advice that is just infiltrated our entire society, that it was based off just the opinions of a couple so-called experts. But it's kind of that, it's where we get that phrase, if you pick up a crying baby, you will spoil them. Well, that's not the case. If a baby's crying, already that's a late cue. The baby's probably been doing what we call some kind of bid for attention already, something that we need to have what we call a sensitive response to them. So I'm getting really deep into it. So you're going to take a class if you want to know more, but no, just kidding. I'll talk about it all day long. But that, that we can really make a change, and that societies that practice this kind of parenting are extraordinarily different. And they're healthy societies that, where children, even in great adversity, whether it's poverty or other kinds of things, you can raise a really healthy child.
What are the societies that are a good model of that?
Well, it was one of the really interesting ones was James Clark Maloney, who was a physician, and it was after World War II, and he was visiting Okinawa after the complete devastation there. And what he saw was children who were happy and well-adjusted, and these were families living in devastation without shelter, in need of food. And he started studying that. And of course, he was also looking at the work, which kind of validated the work of Dr. Bowlby, who is kind of called the father of attachment. And there's a lot of other stuff there that really relates to this. Dr. Mary Main and her work with the strange situation, which kind of validated this idea of a healthy, secure attachment. Or in any case, I'm trying not to go too down a rabbit hole, but what you would see then is that, societies that practice a kind of parenting, and I'm not talking about permissive parenting. I'm talking about authoritative parenting, not authoritarian, but authoritative, where the parent is in control and the child feels that, but the child is constantly treated with love and compassion. And, there still can be this, boundaries and things like that, but it's a really healthy environment for a child to blossom and grow and explore and play and discover who they are.
Yeah.
And there's not a need for, harsh punishment or anything like that whatsoever, because our job is to raise adults, right?
Yeah.
So we need to teach our children to problem solve. And sometimes as parents, we're learning how to do it with them. So that's where parenting classes, I think, are so tremendous. We have so many tips and ways of helping parents learn about that.
My mind all seems to work on spectrums. And so like identify the extremes and then try to find hopefully what is the right answer somewhere in the middle. And so when I think about parenting, I think about it in terms of the extreme of permissiveness, where parents never say no and kids just have too much freedom and no structure at all.
And they don't want that.
Yeah. And that tends to be the flavor of the month in 2025, parents that don't say no. But then on the other extreme is the authoritarian parent. And is your vision of that healthy place somewhere in the middle? And what exactly does that paint a picture of that for me?
Yeah. For me, it's kind of, you choose no matter what as a parent, where you're going to make your investment, because you're going to make an investment in your child. I'm talking about an investment of time and kind of emotional and mental energy. And you can choose to make that, if you're going to have like an authoritarian household or a permissive household, that's going to really show up in the teen years, and you're going to have a hard time. And you can kind of get away with either one of those for a while and feel like you're in control. But if you have an authoritarian household, you're looking at a child who's growing up with resentment. They're harboring things. They're not telling you things. If you have a permissive, environment, your word doesn't mean anything. You're not somebody who's trustworthy. So for me, it looks like in the very early years, developing trust, that you are someone your child can count on. When they ask for help, you are there. It looks like being someone who's, appropriately responsive and sensitively responsive, so that, when your child does something and they mess up, because they will, because they're human, that you don't overreact, that you're calmly recognizing this is a human in development and that this is part of growing, and it's not a goal to manipulate you. It looks like being a detective. As a parent, we have to watch our children, spend time with them to know them. That's the key thing. If you don't spend enough time with them, you don't really know them. And someone you're going to treat with kindness and love and respect. But all these things develop a child who's on your side. They want to cooperate. You're finding purpose and place for them in the home. It's starting simple chores early, and chores aren't a drudgery. They're a joy. It's our attitude. It's what we model all the way through. Our reaction, however we react, is how they react. Yeah. If we don't have our anger under control, why are we yelling at them for being angry? We're not in control. Right. Who's in control here? Yeah. So there's more. There's a lot of things like that we build in early, and it's maintaining that connection. But a lot of parents don't have that connection, and they're struggling, and my heart breaks for them because they're not happy, and they're trying to do all this correction. Yeah. And the child's going, I always liken it to this in my class. We know each other, but not well enough for me to say, hey, Matt, I'm moving in next weekend, and it's going to take 5 days around the clock, and I need you to come help me. And you would look at me like, what? But if I called my sister and said, oh my gosh, I'm under the gun. I've got 5 days. I've got to move in. It's going to be around the clock. She'd say, okay, what time you want me there? Right? Because we have a connection. Right. And to do that hard thing, we can master it. And that's what it's like with our children. If we don't have that relationship and that connection, and we're not, in sync, if we're not attuned with our child and they're not attuned to us, when we're saying, hey, your room's a mess, go clean it up, they're not going to hear that. And there are better ways to say that too. And we also talk about how to do that better. But that's just an example of, you can't expect to be gone all day long and then just come home and bark orders. It's not going to work. And for good reason.
It seems so important to me to have, like, in parenting, having core principles, because if you don't, like, every situation is so difficult, right? Like, it's so messy. Like, every scenario of a parent, say, there's no clear right answer here. Like, you never feel, as a parent, you never feel confident. Oh, yeah, I got that one right. It's
That
like
is so
these
true.
shades of gray, and you hope you get it right more than you get it wrong.
Yeah.
But if you don't have if you don't have principles that you believe to be true, you don't really have a chance of getting it right.
I think that is a real big challenge. And we talk a lot about what are your family's values. And from a very young age, these are the things that are important in our family. And the children are listening. There is no question.
Yeah.
We know they're listening. It may not feel like it.
Yeah.
But, also when you have, you have the parents, right? There's no two individuals that are going to parent the same way. So if you get the parents to sit down and talk about what are our values, what are our family values? And then values are great because they're not rules. Values are saying this is what we hold dear, but there might be a reason we have to do things differently. Yeah. So it's a guidepost or a guideline.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about family meetings and how valuable they are, and talking then about what are your family values. But I want to add this to what you're saying, getting it right. Here's the truth, and this is the beautiful thing. You don't have to get it right.
Yeah.
You only have to kind of get it. You got to be there. Be alongside. And when you don't get it right, talk to your children and say, hey, I don't like how I said that. Yeah. Can we start over? We talk about do-overs. Do-overs are my favorite.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
Or your child comes in demanding something and say, hey, you know what? Do you mind to walk back out of the room and just come back in and can you ask me that in a different way? Because I can't hear it that way you're approaching me. And I really want to connect with you. And they come back in and you start from a new space and see, then you've taught them, which is our real job versus disciplining.
Yeah.
It's teaching. And, that's, I have a beautiful friend, Lou Hannessian, who talks about the gift of a flawed parent. And I think the most dangerous thing I think I've learned from her is that being a perfect parent is no tribute to your child. And I think, I grew up in a generation where the parents were supposed to be perfect and always right. And it didn't teach me how to not be right and how to be vulnerable and how to be flawed and ask for forgiveness. We don't know how to ask for forgiveness if we're not accepting the fact that we're flawed. We're just still trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's not what our kids need. And to ask a child to be perfect is cruel. And ask for ourselves to be perfect is equally cruel.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
There's probably always been that societal pressure on parents to be perfect. I'm sure our grandparents had that same pressure, but I think it's different today because of social media, and you have all these like people that appear like perfect parents online, right? Like being a parent today is like you go on Facebook and everybody's posting their best moments.
Oh yeah,
and you think, I'm a mess. Right? Like
it's true. Social media can really, yeah. That's why classes and support groups, like I'm a big advocate. You cannot parent alone. And I know people are turning to social media, but I really believe in allo-parenting, which means you have all these people in your life helping you parent. And
who are they?
Oh, in my life, there's there are people who I reached out to help watch my kids while I had a big project due. There are people from church. In my case, there are people from the theater. These are people you can lean on when your child needs picked up and you just can't be there, or, your child has a conversation with them and they grow and learn from that.
Yeah.
And I believe we need lots of people. There are people who were in my breastfeeding support group when I was raising babies, and I was learning from these other women who were mavens. Like I feel so fortunate, and that's, to me, that is the golden ticket. I'm still up from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which we have coming up. That is the golden ticket of parenting, is having lots of loving, caring adults in your children's life. And it's hard work because you feel like you're imposing, but you have to reach out and you have to invite people into your lives and you have to ask for their help, and you have to go to the support group meetings and be one who helps too. And that's going to make that makes parenting, the load, so much lighter and more enjoyable.
It's hard in 2025. Like what you just described sounds great, but people, I think, are more disconnected, isolated, and lonely in 2025 than they have been in my lifetime. I don't know.
It's a phenomenon. It really is.
I still don't know why that is, but we've managed to disconnect ourselves
in spite of all of our connection
from community, you know? And like when you think about those communities that you held up as a model, like in Japan, right? Are those more communal cultures? Do communal cultures make it easier for people to parent? Then, like, I mean, we're on the extreme edge of an individualistic culture here.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know how we could go any further. I don't know how we could go any further to the extreme.
A part of the irony is, we've been raised to be independent rather than interdependent.
Yeah.
And so we think it's a mark of failure or weakness if we are part of a community and, embracing that. I think the faith community is so vital and important because it can offer that. And we need more of that. Yeah, it's really ironic that that's the case. And, that culture I described was a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
So I think worldwide it's changed where it's the communication we have now on social media has changed that for everyone.
It's almost like the communities that you had, that support group, that village that you had was almost baked into culture. Like, and now it's almost like people have to manufacture those villages. They just don't happen.
I say manufacture it, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
In terms of, we offer support groups and we offer them in person, and I still lead those meetings now. The Leche League, which we renamed it, and it's called All Babies, Appalachian Highlands Healthy Babies. And we've been meeting in this area probably for at least 50 years. It might even be 55 or 60 years.
Yeah.
The Leche League's been around for 67 years. And we do free breastfeeding support groups. And when I moved to the area, we probably had 20 women. And we did, one thing I loved was helping equip these mothers to volunteer with their children in the community and watch these mothers go, there's still so much I can do while I'm raising a young child. And they felt so fulfilled. And it was really inspiring to hear them feel that way.
Yeah.
But today we offer those same groups and we'll get one or two because most of them are getting their support online and they're missing that. I always liken it to, if you aren't a part of a group like this and making connections, who's going to bring you a casserole when you are not able to cook?
Yeah.
Who's going to hold your baby while you go into the doctor's appointment? We need that community. So we're still fighting for it. So we're doing it right now. We are still meeting. We show up. We meet in person. And then we have support groups. And our support groups are kind of online right now because we're trying to reach rural communities too, where transportation's an issue. We have a really bad transportation issue in this community. But
that is a common theme too.
Yeah.
That keeps coming up. And those of us who don't have to worry about that sort of thing do not realize
is very different
how big of a problem this is for people.
It's really, it's something that I find myself getting more and more pulled into as a tangential part of what parenting work I do, because it is a real big issue.
Yeah. But it's just so many things. I don't know what they are, but we're so disconnected. These things are harder in 2025 than they were when I took your parenting class 25 years ago.
Maybe it'll be a pendulum swing. I'm hoping it'll come back.
I hope so. It has to.
My daughter wants it too. So we've been hosting like little get-togethers, game nights and things at our house.
Yeah.
Because we've been reading all these articles about this disconnected society. I don't know if you read the book Bowling Alone.
Yes.
That whole phenomenon. And so we want to, and I have another really good friend and she's been hosting get-togethers at her house. And we're kind of like, we are going to be there and make that happen.
You're manufacturing it.
We're manufacturing it. And what else can we do? We've got to.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And it's interesting to hear you.
It's intentional. Maybe we should say that instead of manufacturing.
Maybe so.
But it's true.
Yeah. But it's interesting to me that seems like the number one thing that you're saying in parenting is surround yourself with a support group, a village, because it's extremely difficult thing to do alone.
It is, no question. And if it might feel okay right now, you don't know when it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. And then you also factor in like most marriages aren't necessarily healthy and stable.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people can't even count on their
Mm-hmm.
partner in this for
or they're just
support.
One of them might be working 2 jobs or 3 jobs in this society.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about stress, because I believe that I don't think any parent would need parenting classes if there weren't stress. The amount of stress that is caused by, our work, the time demands we have, the limitations on time, the stress where you worry, like, I've got to get this child to bed because I need sleep, because I've got to get up early, I've got to get to work, I've got to do this. How am I going to get this long list of things done? Yeah. But that stress makes us short with our children. It makes us irritable with our children. And it's like a vicious cycle, right? We have unhappiness and we think we're bad parents because we're yelling again.
And we feel guilty.
And so we talk a lot about how to alleviate that stress. And again, building communities of support. You can't go on vacation all the time. Vacations for moms don't really relieve any stress, but because it's still work, but just somewhere else.
Right.
But a community does. It really does. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
I hope it changes, but we're trying. We're going to keep trying.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the answer.
I do too.
Right. Like we're humans. We weren't made to parent or anything else disconnected from other humans. Like it's just not.
Well, I think that's realistic. What I love. Like you're doing sports, and I used to coach soccer when my kids were little, and sports is a great way to kind of build that around. Yeah. And theater again we're doing it. It's just we got to find those mechanisms for it, I guess.
Well, you used a word earlier, resilience. It is not the first time I've heard that word in the last few weeks in this context, and I'm really interested in that word, because that's really what we're trying to do as parents. I think every parent's going to have different values, but I think we all want our kids to be resilient. Tell me what resilience means, like for you in terms of the parenting and how we build that.
We know the thing we talk a lot about. I don't know if you've heard about the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And that was done in 2017 by Kaiser Permanente. And that study took a lot of kind of white middle-class Americans. And I don't want to butcher this, but this is going to be my take on it. And looked at why are they having these diseases that, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these things what's going on here? What are the common factors? And they came up with these 10 adverse childhood experiences. So these are the things that happen in childhood. And these people had these in common. This is pretty extraordinary. So it's made an impact around the world. Yeah. So you're not even looking at people who are marginalized, disenfranchised, people in poverty or war. So it gets even worse, right? But if people have 4 or more of these adverse childhood experiences, death of a family member or a parent, separation of parents or physical abuse, it goes on and on, the different items. And if you have 4 or more of those, it's supposed to be an indicator of the potential of these outcomes later on, and even shortening life by about 20 years.
20.
So it's pretty extraordinary what they discovered. And the thing is, it's not a prescription for your life, right? It's not, this isn't going to happen. Or prediction is a better word, because there are other things that happen in your life, and they can be things like positive childhood experiences. And that's a different study, a different thing, but it's not a one-to-one, but there are ways that we build resilience. And I think the first way we build it, of course, is with secure attachment, responding to that infant, helping that infant grow and trust and love and care, all the way through, so that they know that they can count on someone. And that's where we build that resilience, starting with the attachment. But to me, it looks like a child, when they're facing a so-called failure, they look at it and they go, oh, I messed up, and they dust themselves off, and they get up again and they say, I'm just going to try that again. That we're modeling that for them as well. That's kind of a minor way, but sometimes you don't know in your life what kind of terrible trauma is coming. And depending on how that child's raised is going to be, how they recover from that, what supports. And, again, having multiple adults in their lives is going to be one of those things that helps them recover as well. not just from a standpoint of being taken care of, but who is going to look after them and respond to that. But resilience is, not turning it into things where you blame the world for your problems. It's resilience is being able to, like I said, address, deal with failure as an opportunity, as a way to learn and grow.
How do you see parents undermining resilience?
Well, I think being permissive, that's definitely kind of an easy one, because I think life's going to be easy. Parents are kind of stepping in, kind of like that. What's that sport, where they clean the ice before
the curling,
right? So
a curling parent,
curling parents. Maybe we invented something, but at the same time too, I would never judge a parent doing that if I don't know their situation too, because that doesn't necessarily mean that they're removing that child's ability to be resilient. But I could see like an extreme. I'm just trying to give an example.
Sure.
I think that, of course, making life too easy, but really parents think that if they...
But you said that in passing, making life too easy.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Because you mentioned chores earlier. And those seem important to you.
Yeah, they are. And I don't mean to make it sound like parents should make their children's lives hard. In fact, I would say the opposite in terms of very young years. It's super important to be there and be responsive and help them. And, I'm a big believer in don't tell them to go clean their room. You say, hey, let's go clean your room. Let's look at how we can make your room easier to clean. Chores from very young age make it so you're not suddenly trying to introduce it at an age where they're going, you want me to do what? You start out with simple things, sorting the silverware, helping set the table. Again, children, a lot of what they're looking for is how do I belong in this family? They want a sense of belonging. So chores aren't making life easy or hard. They're making life better and helping children belong in the family. How do we contribute? We all want to know. How do we contribute?
Yeah.
So I kind of went around in a circle there, but I would be careful to say that parents make life too easy. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes because we might have a good reason, or that just seems like the only option at the time. Maybe it wasn't the best. I don't think we should ever try to make it hard for our kids, but I do think we should let those growth opportunities happen and not always kind of jump in to try to rescue. But that's up to each parent. And, having a lot of other adults in your lives gives you someone to talk to and go, what do you think about this situation? What should I do here?
Yeah.
We don't have to do it in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And we can sort it out. Every situation's different.
That community helps us stay away from the extremes, right? It's almost like a natural accountability.
Yes.
Whereas, yes, if you found your community online, it almost can draw you down rabbit holes to the extremes.
I think you're so right.
I've never thought of it that way, but
it's really true. And and I get some information online too, but I think I grew up in a generation where I checked all my sources a million times. Like I go way down the rabbit hole of checking sources. Where does this come from? Who said this? Why?
Yeah.
And I found online groups really helpful in terms of some things. One thing's really cute. You will like this. I love this, that there's a little phenomenon going on where a parent's asking their child to finish a phrase, and it's phrases we grew up with. Like, I brought you into this world. And do you remember the opposite of that, or what the end of that is? And I can take you out.
Yeah.
So the kids are finishing these. They've never heard these phrases. They're growing up without these terrible phrases. So they're going, I brought you into this world, and the child's finishing, because I love you. Right? Or do this because I said, and the answer is so. I said so. And the child's going, said how much you love me. Like you're going, what? There's another way to think of this. They're deprogramming us as the parents because of their, I don't know. They're just
highlights what we had wrong 20 years, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And our parents, and that's being forgiving of our parents, recognizing that they were doing the best that they had with what they had at the time. And there were some pretty bad influences in the parenting expertise world that they were kind of subjected to. But I think we've done so much brain research over the last 20 years, so much research on attachment over the last 70 years. We know so much more, and we're getting to benefit in the realm where researchers knew about it. Now it's getting to the families. Like, here's some really good information, and here's some good skills and tips that make it better and make it different than what our poor parents, all that they had.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they loved us, fortunately. We got through it.
Yeah. Like kids are resilient, right? Like to your point earlier, like as parents, we don't have to get everything right.
They're resilient if we keep loving them and accept them. Yeah. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not. And that's one of those things that I think that we have learned where we've hurt our children by not understanding enough about parenting. And I always liken it to, we think that since we've gone to school, we know how to teach. We think that since we were parented, we know how to parent. We can learn a lot more if we take a parenting class. You'll be surprised. It's just the beginning of, I had no idea.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah.
That's
good.
my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff. And man, you're doing so many important things, from the parenting classes to creating those environments with Theatre Bristol to renovating really important buildings and iconic structures on State Street. Like, it's cool.
It's a whole lot of us. You know, that village? That's an all of my life. Thank God.
It's a common theme, right?
Yes.
Like, we don't do anything alone. Like, nothing big happens when we're disconnected.
Nope.
Whether it's raising a kid or transforming a building or building a nonprofit. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. It's that easy and that difficult.
Right. That's so well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And thanks for all you're doing in Bristol.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure.